day 17 of SHOCKTOBERFEST 2021. I'm your host, Wildman Wes. Today, we have a very good one that I believe, honestly, I love this one. I really do. I'm going to be very biased on this. We're going to talk about Rob Reiner's 1990 adaptation of Stephen King's Misery. This one, though, definitely changed from the book due to some of the subject nature or the content in it. Was done for some of the right reasons, but you know what? We're going to delve into this one. The story is about an author named Paul Sheldon, who's well known for his Victorian-style writing of a character named Misery Chastain. And he's decided that he's going to do one more Misery book before he delves into some more serious-natured content to be more respectable of a writer in the audience, or pretty much in society's eyes. So he's leaving Colorado to go back home to New York to start writing, and while he's driving back, he ends up in a blizzard where his car gets flipped over and basically he crashes into a tree. Now, when he comes out of his, not necessarily a coma, but just his unconsciousness, he's being taken care of by a woman named Annie Wilkes. She seems nice, but very much to herself, very introverted, and she's his #1 fan, loves all of the Misery books, until she reads the manuscript for the next one. She finds out that Misery is going to die. She doesn't like that very much, and so she forces Paul to burn the manuscript and write a new book called Misery's Return. And while this is going on, she is giving him a lot of painkillers to try to help with his dislocated shoulder and 2 broken feet, so it's going to be hard for him to move around. So he's stockpiling them because he starts getting this inclination that she's not all there. And he tries to escape a few times to possibly try to get on the phone to try to talk to somebody to see if he can get some help. Annie figures this out, and also, while he's figuring this out, he also sees a scrapbook of some paper clippings. That Annie was not necessarily the nicest person in the world. She used to work as a nurse in a hospital, especially around the infant care, and she was tried for the murders and deaths of many children that were born, but was acquitted because lack of evidence. When Annie realizes this, she makes sure that Paul is not able to get out of the house indefinitely by taking a sledgehammer and breaking his ankles pretty much to the nubs. So, oof. And I got to admit, that scene, hey, at my age, in my late 30s, I can still not watch that scene. It still messes with my head. Well, anyways, Paul decides he needs to figure out the ultimate way to get back at Annie, because she said that they need to die together because they need Misery's legacy to live on. So he writes a new book. He writes the book that she wants. But before she can actually read it, he sets it on fire because he was burning that because he was made to burn his original work because he learned it from Annie. There's a throwdown struggle with Annie Wilkes and Paul the Cripple, and at the end of it all, he gets a metal doorstop or a steel doorstop, depending on, whatever element of the world it is, cracks her in the head, and she's dead. He eventually escapes the house. 18 months later, he's talking to his agent, and at a restaurant, he sees this server come up and say, "I'm sorry, are you Paul Sheldon? I just wanted to let you know I'm your #1 fan." And he says, "Well, that's very sweet of you." And then the movie ends. A very disturbing movie. Honestly, I know that I've said with a lot of other films, sometimes the tempo or the timing tends to drag. However, in a movie like this, it's actually a good thing, because this movie is mainly 2 characters. There are other incidental characters throughout the film, but they're very sporadic, very few and far between. That's what makes this intensity, this suspense even worse, because you're left with one person on camera within their own thoughts, trying to figure out an escape or what they're going to do to outwit the other person. And plus, especially during all those scenes when antagonist and protagonist are face to face, you can put a tingle down your spine not knowing what's going to happen next. And the fact of the matter is, Rob Reiner did a great casting with this movie, with Kathy Bates as Annie Wilkes and James Caan as Paul Sheldon. 2 of the greatest, performers of their time, and before that and after. their careers span decades. And you know what? They've been doing so great with their work. I mean, Kathy Bates alone won the Oscar for Best Actress for this film. This is the only movie that was adapted from a Stephen King book to win an Oscar. And that is cool. Much less alone, there's not many other horror films that really had landed the Oscar, even back in the 90s. I mean, other than that, one of the only ones I can think of is Silence of the Lambs. I mean, and other than that, there have probably been a handful, and I'm a little bit rusty on that, but I'm sure most of you probably know the ones that I can't think of at the moment. But regardless, I mean, and Stephen King has not been a big fan of a lot of people who have adapted his films, or his books into films. And this one is by far, he said, one of his top 10. I mean, obviously The Shining is not one of them, and we've talked about that before, but then again, Rob Reiner did a very, very phenomenal job with this film. And you know what? When it comes to things that I don't like, I haven't been a fan of when they do change things from an adaptation from a book to a movie, mainly because if it takes away from the source enough where it makes the movie fall flat, that's when I have a problem. In this situation, I can't say that it's necessarily a bad thing, because in the book, Paul Sheldon gets his feet amputated off with a hatchet, basically, by any looks. And in the movie adaptation, he gets his ankles cracked with a sledgehammer. Honestly, this is probably a better situation, especially for acting purposes, because even in the early 90s with special effects, this was pre-Forrest Gump, before they could have Lieutenant Dan's legs, being pretty much CGI'd out. In this one, I mean, it was better that they just had him have completely broken feet to the point where they could go gangrenous, or pretty much he'd never be able to walk again, if that were the case. But, I mean, for the bits and purposes, especially for stunts, it makes more sense. So I'll look the other way on that one. So now it's time to talk about the grade for this film that I'm going to give. Now, as much as I said that this adaptation had something completely different from the book, that some people might frown upon, I understand on a acting performance standpoint. I can understand. So that being said, apart from that, and the story itself, and the acting, and the suspense, I am going to give this one an A+. This is probably even one of my favorite adaptations of a Stephen King book. I mean, there are a lot of them out there, and some of them I really do like. Some of them I could care less about, but this one will always hold a special place in my heart, because after all, we all have our fans. And maybe for this movie, I might be the number one fan. But anyways, we hope you enjoyed this review. Make sure you leave a thumbs up. Leave a thumbs down if you don't agree with me. And you know what? Hey, I'll be nice to you even if you don't agree with me being the number one fan. It's okay. For now. Otherwise, make sure you share on social media. And as always, push that little red button and don't forget to ring the bell for instant notifications. Until then, I'm Wildman Wes, and we will see you tomorrow for day 18 of Shocktoberfest 2021. Stay tuned, and as always, stay scared.